All right, we're back with another episode of the I-64 Sports Podcast. Today we got a real special guest in the house. We got my man Chris Sawyer of the Small College Sports Report. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, Jamar, happy to be here, man. This is exciting. You guys are doing the great things here, so it's great to be a guest on your show today.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to have you. I know we originally met, about 2 years ago now?
Yep.
At the time, you were Stratford.
Stratford AD, absolutely.
Yep, Stratford Athletic Director. But for people that don't know about you in Small College Sports Report, just tell them about what you do.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been in education for years, and back in 2010, I was the campus director for Bryant and Stratton College.
Okay.
At the Hampton campus, they have one in Virginia Beach as well. But that's back when they were starting sports, and C.J. Clemens, that's at Norfolk State now, was their coach.
Okay.
And they became junior college, part of the Region 10 of junior college. So I got involved in that, and then I was there 5 years. I ended up going on to Stratford and starting sports there, becoming the AD.
Okay.
I moved away. I was in Charlottesville, and I started thinking about all the times I tried to get the local press here to cover the junior colleges and the small schools.
It's just so tough, right?
Yeah. I mean, the daily press, not to call them out, Virginia Pie, but I mean, I would send emails and nobody would cover them.
Right.
So I'm really sitting in my office one day, and I said, why not just start your own thing and you can cover them? So I started a website, smallcollegesportsreport.com, and Twitter at small_college1.
Okay.
And I just started writing articles on the schools, interviewing the coaches, the players, and just it kind of took off. Started a podcast, and you and I, you've been on one of my shows that I had this past year, but just something to get the names out there. A lot of these kids are going on, like the JUCO kids, like Greg Hextall at Hampton, Gabby Swinson played for Bryant Stratton, went on to start at Norfolk State.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking about them, so I figured, why not talk about them? So that's kind of where the Small College Sports Report came in, and the following's been great. We're still doing it, it's. I hope to even go further with it because they just deserve. Real quick, you've got apprentice school baseball team's been national champions.
Okay,
Stratford University had the National Coach of the Year this year. Nowhere was it published in any of the papers.
Right.
So that's kind of where I step in.
Right. And he said, like you say, it's not a shot at the papers.
Not at all.
Any of those outlets, but they have a lot. They have a lot to cover. So someone had to come in and kind of take care of the underserved population.
And that's where I see it. And I send stuff to them because I want them to know what's happening in the community. Okay. But it's a way to get their name out. And we talk about, we both know Bobby Rome with VUL, and another local guy who went on at UNC, played some pro ball, started football in Russia, goes to a school that has won nothing in 11 years, and the guy ends up winning games and was here in Hampton. So again, I've put a platform for Bobby, and I do a lot of articles on Bobby to get him out there. Actually, he was named the Small College Sports Report Coach of the Year.
Nice,
so we do stuff like that too. Okay. We pick all-star teams, and I know you're familiar with what you're doing with I-64 Sports, but I'll do that in every season. I just did my basketball all-star, our first team and second teams, our Coach of the Year. So we continue to do Frank Chapman. It's a no-brainer. He was National Coach of the Year, but he deserved it as well. But Cornell Parker, for Bryant Stratton, but played at Maury. Was it Maury and UVA? Was our women's Coach of the Year. They had an outstanding season, and one of their players that was on our first team was just named All-American in the JUCO level. So again, those are things we get out, and we try to let people know what's going on here in the area.
Nice. So how does it feel when you see someone, like you said, when you name someone to your small college team, and then you see them get that kind of national recognition? How does that feel?
It feels good because it's kind of like, like you have a child. You're watching this person develop over the years. And like when I was an AD and a campus director, you saw a lot of these players come in. They had a lot to learn academically and on the field or on the court. But you see like a Greg Hextall who goes on to Hampton, or like I remember when Gabby Swinson came in to Bryant and Stratton, she was our highest recruit we had ever had at that time. And then you see her go on to Norfolk State to start there. And not only that, I talk about the coaches. So you have Jermaine Woods. He was the very first coach at Bryant and Stratton. He's now an assistant women's coach at Wake Forest, but he's been at Virginia Tech and Old Dominion. We've written Maury, and we talk about C.J. Clemens was Booker T. JV coach, and now he's an assistant at Norfolk State who goes off and pulls an upset at Alabama. I just wrote an article because I saw him on my TV screen. So stuff like that is exciting because you see them grow. Karen Barefoot is an example.
Oh yeah.
Was an apprentice, played there, coached there, and won a small college national championship.
That was her first coaching job.
Yeah, it was her first coaching job, and we wrote. I talked to her. There's an article on our website about that, and we keep in touch throughout the season right now. But it's people like that too that are ambassadors that know that hey, it's not just the players, but it develops the coaches to become. To get to that D1 level.
Right.
And that's what every athlete wants to do. They're not always going to make it, but at least the junior college and the small 4-year schools give them an outlet and an avenue to try to get to there.
What kind of response have you gotten from the area coaches? I've
gotten great response. Like the other day, I went over to apprentice school and talked to the football staff. And the great thing is, with what's been happening, I'm able to get my foot in the door there. I can just make a phone call and they'll answer my call or answer my direct message or my text. And I think we talked before we went on the air, they want to be covered. It's an avenue for them to get covered, but it's going great. And then, I went to Memphis.
Okay.
And so I've expanded it a little bit. Really, instead of just Virginia, North Carolina, we're going all the way down really through the southeast to the mid-south.
Okay.
And there's a school, and I'll give them a shout-out, Southwest Tennessee Community College, embraced the Small College Sports Report this past year, and we went out to their games. Their baseball and softball teams are doing well. We talked to them. So those are it's really expanding because they're seeing that somebody out there wants to cover us. And in Memphis, you know how Memphis is. You got the Grizzlies, you got the Tigers.
Right.
It's a huge thing. And now the great thing about Memphis is the commercial appeal, their newspaper started picking them up and writing articles on them and retweeting the articles we wrote. So I feel good that maybe I helped them a little bit get some recognition that that they deserved.
Right. Yeah. How did you get your start in sports?
Man,
was it always through administrative, or were you a player? Were you nice back in the day?
Yeah. I went to Cape Henry.
Yeah,
I played basketball and soccer and lacrosse there, but lacrosse became my sport, and I went on to Lynchburg College, Division III school, to play lacrosse. Things didn't work out that great, but Nah, it wasn't cut. It was I didn't go to class.
I
always tell student athletes that story. It's I did not go to class, and that was it for me. I was.
Did you lose your scholarship?
Well, D3 didn't have scholarship. I lost my place at Lynchburg College. Put it that way. Yeah, they suspended me. I mean, it was something I learned, but I have a master's degree now, so I learned from it. But yeah, once I got to Bryant and Stratton and we started looking at the JUCO, Eric Blackwell is their athletic director. We talked a lot, and that's where I got really into the sports on the administrative side. I would travel to every game, away, home, you name it. I was there taking care of whatever I could do. And so when I went to Stratford, they heard about that.
Right.
And that's how that got started. And you need an athletic director. You can't run a sports program even at these small career colleges that we have here in the area without an athletic director. So that's kind of how I got involved in it. But I've always loved sports. I mean, that's my passion. Right.
At Bryant and Stratton, what do you think was the biggest challenge you had there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, perfect example. You've got a Thomas Nelson who has athletics. They're a state school. They're supported, through the state. Bryant and Stratton's a private school that's traditionally been known as a career college, and most of their students were adults.
Okay.
So at Bryant and Stratton, you're trying to start a sports program and convince 17, 18-year-olds to look at a school that, where I was, we're in the Peninsula Town Center, like a strip mall.
Right.
It's not your traditional college campus with dorms and things like that. So that was the biggest obstacle, was how do you convince a kid who might have an opportunity, at a Chowan or a Catawba or a smaller school to come. And to be honest, it was the coaches. And that's why C.J. Clemens was hired, because he was able to bring them in. That's why Frank Chapman was hired at Stratford, or an Alan Elledge for baseball.
Okay.
Norby Wilson was hired at Bryant and Stratton. He was he's a Hall of Famer, and he was at First Colonial for years. So that was the biggest obstacle. But now what these schools have done is they do have dorms, kind of. They have apartment complexes that, like Bryant and Stratton has an apartment complex their students stay in across the street.
Right.
So they're changing a little bit. But Bryant and Stratton has grown so much, and I'm shouting them out. I will say I'm an alumni of Bryant and Stratton, so I can shout them out.
Right.
I can give a shout out because I do have a diploma on my wall from them. But they have 2 huge charter buses. They're traveling everywhere in style. They're we talked about esports.
Esports. Right.
I always say Bryant and Stratton has set the standard in the Hampton Roads area for what small college or JUCO athletics needs to be to compete with the traditional community colleges and like a Lewisburg college. And they support it. And that's the biggest thing these schools need to realize. You've got to put the money behind it.
Yeah.
It will pay off in the end. But the ones in the first 2 years that are just pinching pennies and don't want to do this, don't do that, they're going to fail. And TCC, perfect example. They had an athletic program, and now they don't.
I think they were one of the first ones.
They were, and actually, with Bryant and Stratton, we went to TCC and talked to them about how did they do this. So we modeled it after them, and that's the whole reason we decided to go junior college because of TCC. Right. And then, unfortunately, they, the money wasn't there for them, and I just don't think they did it the right way. And Thomas Nelson is doing it the right way.
So how are you able to bring in quality coaches when the funding isn't there?
It's a great question, too, because you look for, like, I'm going to bring up Frank Chapman again, just because he's a guy I know real well. I hired him myself, National Coach of the Year. He was at apprentice school.
Okay.
Apprentice school, as you know, is a very, it's a different animal. The way they bring in kids, the grades have to be excellent because they're coming in and they're not having to pay tuition. Chapman, I brought over.
They're actually getting paid.
They're getting paid.
Getting paid to go to school.
But when we brought Chapman over, really, you just said, "Here, what we did at Stratford. We gave him a full-time salary."
Okay,
and that's odd in the JUCO level here locally. A lot of them are part-time employees.
Disclose that how much they make?
I cannot do that.
Is it enough to live off of?
Yeah, it's a good salary. Even the part-time guys at some of the other schools make pretty decent money, but they have other jobs.
Right. Okay.
So what we did is we brought in and made a lot of these guys full-time, gave them benefits, and I think they have an investment in the program to do that. Okay. Now, Bryant and Stratton, as CJ came in, I think now they've changed it a little bit. A lot of these the head coaches are more full time, and that's the big thing is you have to have the commitment and the buy-in from the coaches in order to get that to be able to get these students to come in. If you don't have that buy-in, it's just going to be what I think again a TCC was. You just had some guy probably making a very small stipend, and it was his job. He had to go to practice at night, and you know how that can get working all day. So these guys,
family at home,
yeah. So I think that's the way to bring them in. But vision, you got it. Like Eric Blackwell at Bryant Stratton is one of the best ADs in this area. Okay. Michael Allen at Apprentice School. They have a vision. And
Michael Allen from Norfolk Christian.
Norfolk Christian, and he went over to Apprentice, and he's turned that place around.
He turned Norfolk Christian around.
Yeah, he did, and I think that's why they hired him. But you get people like that can sell a vision to those coaches, and I think that's what we did when I was at Stratford. We sold a vision.
Do you think it helped, because you have guys like CJ came from AAU basketball. You have Jermaine Woods came from AAU basketball. I think even with the larger schools, that's the same thing they're doing. You take Memphis, for instance. Memphis, who did they go when they was ready? They got Penny Hardaway, so now he get all the recruits. It makes it a lot easier that way when you don't necessarily have to sell the program. You're just the coach is selling themselves.
Well, you make a great point with the AAU because one of the things with CJ, when I'm talking to Eric, I'm like, how are we getting these kids? We got a Tim Hewitt who had gone off somewhere else. We got a couple other guys. Zach Johnson went off to Army and then came back and went to Bryant and Stratton after a year. But it was AAU. They knew CJ from the AAU. Chapman and to get Leroy Skinner, another one. They coach like Mike Scott, Kent Bazemore. They coach these guys in AAU, so they have a credibility. People know their name, and I think that's the big thing is knowing when a guy's out there recruiting, they're like, "Where are you at?" But you know who the coach is. Yeah, you already know who he is, and then you're like, "Okay, let me see what this school's about."
Because I even get that a lot. Like when I started I-64 Sports, people was like, they were following the page without knowing that I was behind it. But then it became, when they knew I was behind it, it was like, well, let me support Jamar. But in actuality, I've been behind 3 companies. I've been behind Recruit 757. I've been behind JarCam, now I-64 Sports. So it's kind of more buying into the person. Same with what you're doing, college sports.
Well, you make a great point because we talk about Bobby Roan. We're both good friends with him. So I'm sitting in Charlottesville, and I'm watching people retweet my stuff. And then I talked to him on the phone one night. He goes, You're the small college sports report guy, and so you're right. People start. I wrote this article on Bryant and Stratton, and my first article, and it was really just about my experience. And it got retweeted, and then I talked to Eric Blackwell. He said, "Was that you?" He said, "Because who else knew about the way we did things. And it was that's kind of same with you. It's really for us too, is people knowing what we've done and knowing our backgrounds and that we're serious about what we do. I can talk small college sports all day because it's what I love and what I follow. I follow it more than you know, I love UVA. I loved watching them win the national championship, but I'd rather watch, you know, I was watching Stratford and Apprentice live streaming from my house.
But that personal connection is there.
You know, the kids.
It's more personal. It affects you more. Is, you know, like I said, you know, their stories.
Right.
Is it hard when you're covering? Because I know for me, it's hard to separate personal, you know what I'm saying, from sometimes just covering the story. Is that hard for you too?
It is, Jamar. And like, for example, you know, I started sports at Stratford. I'm not there anymore. I'm gonna tell you this. It takes a lot of pride, and I want people to understand that. It takes a lot of pride to drive my car when I'm in town to a Stratford game because, you know, things just didn't work out the way I wanted them to work out there. But the kids and the family are like, they still come up to me. I'm so close to them, and it means a lot. But it is hard to be biased because I want to write about Stratford because I feel like that's my kid. Bryant and Stratton. I'm great friends with Eric Blackwell, and I have, you know, the degree from there, and I worked there, but then you look at Apprentice, and I had to form a relationship with them, and even Thomas Nelson now, like Coach Moore, the basketball coach, and Ben Delgado now, baseball. We've been talking to them a lot, so I want to promote them more. I mean, I get biased with Bobby Rome because what he's done is great, but you also sometimes have to be objective and look back and okay, wait a minute.
But then when you see how, like you said, he took over a program that hadn't won in 4 years. So when you see the work he's put in and you see that pay off, I mean, you don't really have a choice but to you have to commend him for that.
And you want to be, and also, you know, I loved when we named him Small College Sports Report before I could even send him our little certificate. His coaches bought him a big trophy.
That's what's up.
And he has it on his Facebook. He has it on his Twitter. But my day is when I see Bobby Rome, and no offense, VUL, but when I see Bobby Rome move on, which he will one day.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm going to sit back, and I know you will too, because we both we both cover him and give him the coverage he deserves. I know both of us will sit back and go, you know, we were covering him, and now look at him, and hopefully he'll let us cover him still. But,
yeah, I think it will.
But those are the things, and like that's I just wrote an article on C.J. Clemens, and I chronicled the first time I met him up to now. And, you know, he sent me a direct message. You know, we talk every once in a while through Twitter, but it got a lot of play. A lot of people were retweeting, and I don't think a lot of people knew the story of him because, and that's what I want to get out is those little stories, the Jermaine Wood stories, the Karen Barefoot stories, even the Alan Elledge, you know, at Stratford. This man has built a baseball program from scratch. He started the Thomas Nelson. I mean, a lot of these people in the community have started other programs here in the area that are still going. And I don't think people get enough credit for that.
What do you think is the biggest misconception of an athletic director on the college level?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I would talk about on the small college level.
Okay.
We do everything. You know, from getting the water jugs to I drove Stratford soccer down to Miami in vans. I think I told you about that. Me and my associate athletic director, Phoenix
I remember
Evans,
that because I went to the soccer game before you guys left. I came out there. I
mean, you know, you take 15, 18, 19-year-old girls, you're driving, you and your associate AD are driving down there. I mean, you did all the travel, all that stuff. So small college ADs do a lot. And a lot of times, you know, when you look at ADs, you see, they're making all, like the D1s, they're making all this money. They go out in the community, but really you start it from the ground level to ordering the uniforms, to doing the inventory, to doing stuff that other schools have people to do that for. And like at Stratford, it's just me and Phoenix. Now, Blackwell at Bryant Stratton he's got a nice little team now, but again, that's because they've had sports for going on 9 years now. Like I told you, once it goes, you're gonna start being able to build, and I think that's where like a Thomas Nelson is growing. But I forgot to bring up this school is Regent University.
Oh yeah, Regent. Yep.
They have sports now. They've made a change at their AD level in the past year. But I think Regent is one of those schools that could really just blossom.
They could. Who's the AD over there now?
I don't know. It was Pastor Cheeks, and I'm not sure what happened to him, but they have somebody new, and I don't know if they're. And that's one I don't.
They don't want you back in there, huh?
No, I don't. You know,
they did, but stop playing.
Regent. Regent could be really big, and I'm gonna say that right here. If they listen to this, there's things that they can do that could. I mean, they have the money.
That's what I was. They
the
have
money
the
and
money.
the name. Those are the two biggest things that a small college does not have, and they have it. They're in the NCCAA, which is the same as Virginia University of Lynchburg.
Okay.
Apprentice and Stratford in the USCAA.
Okay.
But the NCCAA can play anybody.
Right.
Anybody.
So they can play VUS play Hampton, and they play Hampton again this year.
Yeah, they can do it. Those schools can do any of that. So it's a great opportunity for them to do that. And I think Regent, I hope, because it would be huge for this area. They could get a lot of the local kids to stay. And but they don't. Another thing, not to jump off, but a lot of these schools don't have their own facilities. And Regent doesn't either. No, really, I don't think anyone in the area has their own facilities.
But they do have a basketball team.
They do.
So where do they play? You know where they play?
I could Tallwood or one of the Virginia Beach high schools. Yeah, and they actually upset Stratford. You know, Stratford was number 2 in the country, and they upset them.
Okay.
And one of the things that drove me crazy is I covered it. I wrote Regent a message. I said, you've got to get a website because somebody has to know that you just upset the number 2 team in the country that had only lost like 3 games, and you're a brand new team.
Right.
And it was at Stratford. But those are the things that I try to help with, and I hope that some of these schools will continue to look at what we do.
We're gonna get you that job. Come on, let's get.
I'll tell you,
we're gonna get you that job.
Right, yeah,
Chris, we're gonna get you that job, man.
Come on, I need that.
We're gonna get you that job. I mean, because if you look at it, you've been to multiple schools doing the same thing. You do your own thing now. Like, who else would be a better candidate for that?
Well, that's what I try to say, and that'd be great if somebody wants to call me up. I would love to talk to them. And Pastor Cheeks and I at Regent were good friends, and we talked a lot. We threw a lot of things off of each other. I mean, they have soccer. We played them. I scheduled the game with Stratford in soccer, and they oh my gosh, I'm telling you, they are sitting on a gold mine. And every coach will tell you in this area that Regent is the one that you would think would go up, and I hope they do, because they have an opportunity to surpass.
Right, but even still, they could jump from that NCCA level to like a D2 level.
Well, they can. You know, you've got the NAIA, which is a great league.
Right.
They're dying to have somebody here in Hampton Roads, and there's schools that would love to do it. But I see Regent as that school that could do that, or like you said, go to a D3, D2 level and compete with the Wesleyans and schools
UVA
like
Wise. I don't see why not.
UVA and Regent has the dorms. Regent has the beautiful campus. I mean, they have everything that they need that they can move on, and I hope that they take advantage of that and not just settle for what they have.
Do you think they will give football a shot?
I heard they did not want football. What I was told, and it's just, what I was told, that they don't want to be Liberty. Liberty has gone to be just an unreal athletic department.
Liberty athletic facilities now, they have the indoor practice facility. But see, it's unreal now.
But they could. That's the thing. Yeah. Schools like that could, and that's where we try to promote them. But the one thing about Regent, and again, not throwing them under, but they just don't have. I can't find stuff on Regent. Yeah. Because nothing's covered on. I can't even go to a website to find out what happened at the game, how many points. So I have to rely on the teams that they played, and hopefully they're posting their stats. So.
Okay. So day to day, what's the day to day? What are you doing as athletic director?
Well, I'm not athletic director anymore, but what
is an athletic director doing on a day to day basis?
A lot of stuff we're doing is retention of our student athletes. We're making sure they're in class. Like what I would do when I was athletic director, they would walk in the front door of the building, and the first person they'd see is me.
Right.
We're making sure they're going to class. Then I'm making sure the coaches are doing what they need to do. We're doing study hall, making sure everyone shows up to study hall.
Okay.
We are coordinating travel, coordinating hotels, referee. We got to get the referees.
Right.
Scheduling. I did all the scheduling.
Seems a lot like high school athletic director.
You know what? That's a great point, Jamar. It really is. Because you are doing everything, and you're trying to get it off from, remember, both places I've been was ground floor. So there was no established anything. It was like we were flying by, to see if our pants, trying to make it happen.
Right.
And, but it's exciting when it does, and you're able to post a schedule, and all of a sudden you're traveling. I never forget our first game in soccer with Stratford. We went down to Wilmington. Boy, we got our butts whooped. But I still have the picture of the team in my office right now that I'm in, right before that game, because it was a reality. I mean, they had the uniforms on and they were playing really, they played Cape Fear the first game. They were like number 6 in the country. I mean, they were amazing, but we were on the field.
Right.
And that was a year and a half of a vision, and now it's reality. So that was the most exciting thing for me, and that's why I do what I do now.
Right.
Because I want some of these kids to realize that they're not just settling on a school. You know, we talk, a lot of kids think they're settling for JUCO. They're not. I mean, they're investing in themselves. In 2 years, they might do something better and go somewhere, you know, that they didn't think they could go.
Do you think there's more beauty in the struggle as far as building up something?
I think so, because it makes me love it more.
It seems like you do, because like even when you started Small College Sports Report, I mean, you have, like you said, background in education. You know a lot about sports. You could have worked for the Daily Press. You could have worked for the Virginia Pilot, but you chose to do your own thing. So, like, you know, to me, it just seems like you kind of like, you know, kind of like me. Like, you just like building stuff up from the ground.
Absolutely. And that's why I admire what you're doing here with I-64, because it is. I mean, we have a passion for it. And I think, you know, we have other jobs. And, you know, a lot of guys that write and do things, that's their job. This is not our job.
Nah, I'm a teacher.
Yeah, it's our
I'm spring break now.
I sell insurance, you know what I mean? But, you know, we have a passion for it. And I think that shows through the stuff. I mean, you know, I got to give you a shout out, because, you know, I follow you on Facebook and Twitter, but you've got something on there 3 times a day, you know, and
when you sleep, right?
Yeah. But I see, that's where I envision trying to get myself. You know, I'm a one-man show right now. And I do as much as I can. You know, you work all day. I can't have my computer out, but I'll come home, or on the weekends I'll try to write something or interview somebody. And I just started a YouTube channel really 2 days ago, which is something, I've got my son helping me. You know, he's 14 with a video camera. Oh, yeah. That's why I went out to Apprentice and interview. So I want to do more of that, kind of like this. And this, you know, I've been doing this platform like you're doing as well. Have to promote, you know, Real Sports Talk out of Memphis. I was down there. We had you on the podcast. We're actually going onto TV down there, Comcast. I'll be doing a 20-minute segment on Small College every Tuesday.
You're talking about Memphis schools as well?
We'll do like Southwest Tennessee, the one I was telling you about. We'll talk about, and I'll promote like our Coach of the Years and stuff like that. And but just to keep me relevant down there as well. And that's the tough thing too. One guy, I'm trying to do a whole area. If I was back here in Hampton Roads, I would just strictly do Hampton Roads, but I'm not. So I want to keep it relevant where I am too.
Right. I mean, the thing is, like you said, we're one man show. I have a small crew now. I have a couple of interns. Shout out Sinai, Cam, Sean. I have about 3 or 4, but for the most part, it's just us. You know. Yeah. So what keeps you pushing? What keeps you going every day?
Again, the passion, the love for the athlete and the coach, and the love to see what they do. And I enjoy, like, I've always been a writer. I won't say I'm a professional writer at all, but I mean, all through high school and college, I love to write. And I just get, you know how it is, Jamar. I mean, you're working at another job, you get stressed out. This is really a big stress reliever too. But it also, like you said, when you see some of the people we cover move on and become something great, whether it's on the court or whether it's in the community, sometimes you feel like, you know, I played a little bit of role just to promote who they are. You know, we may not have gotten to where they are, but at least someone's going to read about them and learn, hey, this guy did this. Wow, he struggled. I got to talk about Zach Johnson. I'm sorry, my allergies are killing me today, but I talk about Zach Johnson. Guy, you know, Kings Fork, went to Army, got injured, had never heard of Bryant and Stratton ever, but it was C.J. Clemens because he knew him. Wow. He comes there, becomes an all-region 10 team, moves on to Apprentice as a 2-time All-American. It's people like that who I still talk to Zach. Like, Zach just dropped an album, so I'm trying to promote, you know, help him. You know, I tweeted out, but the guy,
Jimmy Iovino,
he is a great, great kid, and what he's done for himself, and people don't know his story. I mean, you know, whoever thought Bryant Stratton would get a kid that went to West Point to come back and play basketball? I mean, there's other guys I could talk about at all these schools that went away, like, went away to a school and came back to junior college and realized, you know, now they went
Keith Stagg. Steve Stagg.
Oh my God.
Tremendous
you know, what's funny? I just talked to Keith Stagg, about 3 weeks ago. He hit me up. Keith Stagg was somebody that we recruited hard at Stratford, and that was because of Chapman. I mean, things, you know, haven't gone the way Keith had wanted them to go, but I'm going to tell you what, I got to know him, and he's a great kid. And the fact, and that's another thing, the fact that some of these players will reach out to you, you're not there anymore, and will just, like, out of the blue, will reach out to you and say something like Keith. I won't repeat what he said, but what he said to me, I'll tell you what, it hit me pretty hard right here. And I never knew him and some of the players felt that way. That was satisfying. That made it all worth it. And that is why I do this stuff, because they like what I do. So.
Gotcha. What's the trajectory for small college sports?
No, it's kind of what you've been doing. I've been looking at getting some interns to help me out, especially since I'm out of town, but to help me out locally.
Right.
We want to. I've got some things in works to do a TV show here, possibly.
Okay.
Trying to get back on the radio, but just continuing. I have a radio voice too. Yeah, I appreciate that. But I have that 5-year plan. I mean, this is only we're literally 1 year old now. But I would love to do it full time. It's just, or as you said, parlay it into something where someone picks me up. I always see myself being an SID because I've run the websites and write the articles. So that would be something that I would love to do. But in the meantime, I'll continue to promote anyone and everyone who wants to be promoted. Right. I don't charge a thing. I do it out of the love for the game.
Absolutely. What do you think is the benefit in what you do? I don't mean you personally. Sure. I just mean, just for the area.
I think, you look at Hampton Roads, and I mean, we have great D1 programs, we've had great programs all in the NCAA. I think it helps that the more the small colleges get promoted, the more opportunities kids will have that they didn't know they had. And for example, somebody posted one day about the number of teams that were in the NCAA tournament. What a great year it's been for basketball. And then I started thinking, and I think it was the Daily Press, and I retweeted them back with Apprentice, Stratford, Bryant, Stratton, because there are other schools that are doing just as well. Now, the talent level's not the same, of course, but the success is the same. And I think that is where I see the day that you look at Lewisburg College. They're in a tiny, tiny town. They're covered by their newspaper because it's all they have. Here, we're inundated. I mean, we got 7 cities. We're inundated with everything. And you just don't get the coverage. So I think the more, I'll tell you, Larry Rubama has been a huge supporter. Yeah, when I was at Bryant Stratton, I think he got sick of me because I would send him stuff, but he would, like Jaleel
Nelson.
No, he played at Maury. Gosh, I apologize. Ferguson. Thank you. We
don't get at Maury. Got started.
we got Jaleel to come to Bryant and Stratton. Okay. CJ did, and Larry wrote a little blurb about it. And then Mike, another Maury kid, Bass Knight went to Lewisburg.
Everybody. Huh?
So the thing that Larry did for us was when Bryant Stratton was playing Lewisburg, they were number 2 in the country. So I threw him a bone. I said, okay, look, you got Jaleel Ferguson against Mike Bass Knight playing each other. Lewisburg's undefeated, but they're playing at Maury because that's Bryant Stratton's home thing. I said, what a great article. He wrote an article on it. Bryant Stratton goes and upsets Lewisburg and beats them. But things like that Larry has actually taken that, and I can send him stuff, and he'll every once in a while put in the paper. Right. That's a big victory for the small colleges because that hasn't been happening.
I think you ran the paper early this year with your Coach of the Year.
Well, yeah, that's right. He did the coach. Yeah, and that was great because that's where I felt like, we talk about what are some of the accomplishments you feel. Yeah. When I saw he posted that, I'm like, okay, well, that kind of legitimizes what we do. Right. And that's what we talk about, having full-time jobs. When someone legitimizes what you do and it's your passion, and Larry's a full-time writer, that makes me feel like, okay, what I'm doing is actually important to the people that we do it for.
Oh, yeah. Now, as a athletic director, you are in charge of a lot of men. We were in charge of a lot of men. And something I heard from Jerry West last week, you talk about white athletes in sports. He said there's not a lot of white basketball players in sports. But as an athletic director, as a white person, how do you handle social issues when you're dealing with a lot of different ethnicities and a lot of different social issues? How do you handle those?
Yeah, that's a great question because, you look at the schools I've been at, and the players you don't really have a lot of white athletes. I'll look at basketball. I look at a Bryant Stratton, I look at a Stratford. I didn't really have any issues with it, but I think the guys knew no matter what our race was, especially with me being the athletic director, they knew that, Chris was all in for him no matter what was going on. Now I will say with some of the other sports, you do that. There is more of a white athlete in some of these other sports, and I think that's because just the way, the way those sports are. And there have been some issues that I dealt with, and one of the things you got to go in and just say you have to set. Really, you have to draw a line, where things are and what you're going to do. But they're going to look to you, and the administration looks at you on how you're going to handle things. And I think that's the most important thing. I wouldn't let it happen, but I mean, it does happen. Right. You just try not to. But I think the places I've been, we've all been very close, and everyone knows that the administration is close with the AD and with the campus directors. That if something does happen, we're going to handle it, and we're going to handle it the right way, no matter what. There is no, we're all colorblind, but it does happen.
Right.
But one of the things for me, and I'll tell you, Jamar, it's a great point you bring up. I mean, look, I went to Cape Henry, and I'll be honest, we had one African American in our school when I was there. And then you become an AD at some of these schools. You really do, whatever your thoughts were growing up, you're open to a lot of other thoughts. And where, the struggle and the background that your players had is not like the background that I had.
Right.
And, I won't say I had it easy, but I didn't have it like a lot of these players have it. And that's a reason they're at JUCO or a small college, because there has been something in their life that you look at a Keith Stagg. You look at there is something. Now I will say his dad, Coach Stagg, was a big instrumental thing of getting him at Stratford. But you look at some of the things that have happened, and that's where I think the small colleges come in, is they can help the kids and make them become student athletes, and that's always been the biggest thing. And they see that somebody cares about them, and I think that's where like a Chapman comes in, because
his son is killing it.
Oh, his son, his son.
Killing it, man.
Well, you look at Speaking of Coach Coleman over at Bryant Stratton. I forget to mention him, but he, another guy that I think these kids respect him so much. I watched Chapman be just hard. I remember his first couple of practices. I'm like, oh my God, what? I didn't know he was like.
No, he was like that.
But then, when I talked to him, he's like, Chris, man, they know I love them, but that's the thing. Like we watched was it Tom Izzo?
Oh yeah.
That's Coach Chapman. That's coaching.
I didn't have a problem with that at all.
That's the coaches I see, and that's what I got thrown up. I was at Cape Henry. I never forget. I didn't foul a guy on a layup, and we lost the game. My coach threw me up against the wall. In high school, I was a junior. I didn't hate him. Yeah. I said, "You're right. I screwed up." But back to the point. It's making them know that you care about them, and that's the biggest thing, is caring about them and caring that they're in class and that they're doing something. I got a girl, her name's Michaela Price.
Okay.
Real quick story. Came down from Maryland, was being recruited by a lot of schools. I talked her into coming to Stratford, played soccer, was the goalie of the week, national goalie of the week, now plays at West Virginia Tech, which is an NAI school. Talked to her the other day. Again, but she had no direction at the time. I mean, and she struggled a lot, but she still calls my wife Mama Ryan.
Okay.
She still contacts me, and that's the biggest thing, because they know that I will do anything I can to help them, no matter what.
The thing nowadays is, like, no matter what side of the fence you're on as far as racial issues,
correct,
like it's there, and you have to acknowledge that it's there. Like it is what it is. Me and Bobby spoke on it last week. When I personally feel like, when I put out a story, it has to be top notch. When I put out info, it has to be top notch. Now, on the contrary, I don't feel like, just being real, I don't feel like my white counterparts have to do that.
Right.
I just feel like, we want to use the word privilege. I feel like there is, some form of privilege regardless. And I have to jump, twice as high, run twice as fast, That's how I feel.
And I will tell you that, because I like I say, I follow you all the time, and you are real. The stuff, even the comments you'll make on Facebook, I mean, they're real, and it opens up no matter if you agree with people, agree with them or not.
Right.
It's out there, and I think that's one of the great things about sports. I mean, on Real Sports Talk, down in Memphis, we would have a Keeping It Real segment, and it was a social segment. Lee, I was white, Lee's black, and we thought that was a pretty cool thing for us, because we could debate some issue. We may not agree on them, but it's out there. But I think sports can bring people together. But there's a lot of mess right now going on out there, and I just love to watch people play and people just do what they love. Yeah. But in today's society, it's different. I think that's a new thing with an AD or a coach or anything. You have to learn how to deal with that.
Right.
But it's. It's not something you thought would come into play, back 9 years ago when we were starting athletics, but it does. It does.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it is what it is. And I shouldn't say unfortunately. I think at a certain point, you just have to face the situations as they come. Can't run from them ever. But, we've always had a great relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing. I'm a relationship guy. Like I talk about Phoenix Evans, the associate AD over at Stratford. I brought him over there. We've known each other 20 years. We come from completely different backgrounds. But I'm gonna tell you what, love the guy. We talk all the time, even though I'm not there anymore. And I think that's the big thing too. We talk again. It's the relationship. I mean. These players aren't my friends, but I consider them family. Again, if they need something, I'll do it. But it's almost like being a dad. It's like you see them succeed and you want to help them. One of the hardest things I did was have to see, at Stratford, these kids moved in with each other, and I think that was my biggest mistake at Stratford is you put them all in these apartments and dorms, and I've always been the first to admit that. Because there was so much struggle and so much issues, and there were the whites and blacks. I'm not saying rape, but it was just a mess, and you had to learn how to handle it. And I think when you look back, if I could give anyone any advice when you're starting a program, don't do dorms to start it out, just because you throw 18-year-olds that come from, for example, you got a Keith Stagg and some of these other guys who've gone off to JUCOs. Their life hasn't been like a person that may play on one of the other teams that's come up through private school. I mean, you talk about that, and sometimes young kids don't know how to handle that, and that's where we as administrators have to step in and do that. Now, you learn that in college, but I'm just saying, to me, don't do dorms when you start. Make that. That's a good thing Bryant and Stratton did. They waited. They waited years before, and I'm sure they have issues too. But it's just different. Hampton Roads has a lot of different diversity and different communities, and when you're bringing them all together, it's interesting how you're going to make them mesh and become a team. But they have, and I will say that you look at all these teams on the floor. None of that. You don't see any of that on the floor. They are a family, and they've all done well. All of them have done well.
What's next up for you?
Next up for me again, I'll be doing the segment on Real Sports Talk. Again, that's not in this area, but I have had some talks to get my radio show back on. I had a radio show here last year. Getting the podcast like you, and just continuing to cover, write articles, continue to get people. I mean, it's been great on my website, the hits I've been getting, and that's it. Just continue to find what I can do to cover anyone that I like to do stories too, like on the coaches that have gone on and done something, or the players that have gone on, because I think it can help motivate some of the guys that are coming in now and see, okay, this guy did this, I can do it too. Right.
Was life more enjoyable as an athletic director or a media guy?
I tell you, it was stressful because I was working 7 days a week. But I will say that, I mean, I love being a media guy because I feel like I'm doing something that's important. But nothing can take away from being an athletic director with the relation. Again, I go back to the relationships I developed with the coaches and the players and the families too. The families, when you start a program, those families, like, who are you and what is this school? You've got to you got to convince them that you're going to take care of their kids. And I think that they're both different, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And man, I hope the next how many years I'm alive that I can continue to do it.
Gotcha. Something I meant to ask you: what do you look for when you hire a coach? Is there certain things, certain looks, certain philosophy that you look for in a coach?
Yep, that's a great question. I make the coaches give me their vision. Like, I want them to know, like, when I was hired, I again keep bringing up Stratford just because that's close to home. But when you're hiring a coach, I want them to know about the school and tell me, how are you going to convince a kid to come to a school in a strip mall that's never had athletics before? But then how are you going to let that family know you're going to take care of them? And when I hear I want a vision, but I also want someone disciplined. The first thing they have to, in my mind, is academics, because you can get a player that's great, but when they become ineligible, they're doing nothing for you.
That's right.
So I want someone who's like that, but then I want someone who, like, again, a Chapman, who's tough as nails on them, but they love them. They're not tough as nails on them because they're a jerk. They're tough as nails on because they want them to succeed. And that's what I love. And what I loved when I traveled with coaches, when you're on the bus and when you're at lunch with and breakfast, I mean, the whole dynamic between the players and the coach versus when they're at practice on the court, that says a lot to me, and how you can relate to the kids. And that's been the big thing to me, is how you relate to the kids, but also, you want to win. We don't want that to be the first thing, but heck, I want to bring home a banner, a trophy, a ring.
Would you hire a coach from a losing team?
I have.
For real?
I have.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I think losing teams bring bad habits.
I have hired from losing teams, but I will say this. I saw something in them, and sometimes it's the situation they're in, and maybe that's where I should be. It's a situation that they were in.
Because I'm speaking more on the high school level.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm speaking more on the high school level.
Yeah, I mean, I played on a lot of losing teams, and those coaches went nowhere. But no, I agree there. But I think sometimes the situation, especially in small college, a lot of it's funding. I mean, that's what I've seen. The biggest thing is how much is the school willing to put in to this, and if they're not willing to put into it, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard to make it work,
right?
Because you got to pay for a lot of things, and kids want to look nice too.
Man.
The uniforms. I mean, even down to uniforms, they want. They want to look good, and they
don't want to wear Russell Athletic.
No, okay, all right. I was not going to say that, but we had a Russell rep come in, and I had already had Under Armour, and I showed. I never forget. It was Jalen Stagg. I'm called Jalen. My man Jalen out.
Yeah, Jalen. Yeah.
I show. He goes, "Oh no, we're not wearing Russell."
Right,
so Jalen, you don't like Russell, but no. But that opened my eyes because to me it was like, oh, it's 10 times cheaper.
Yeah.
And we get 2 for 1.
Yep.
Kids don't want that.
I remember I talked to Norfolk State basketball coach Jones, and he was like, it was hard for them to recruit when they were sponsored by Russell.
I remember.
And I think they switched to Nike 2 years ago.
I remember the Russell. Yeah.
Yep. And they bought in the scoreboard. He was like, it was just so tough for them. Yeah. Kids are brand. I don't want to use the word, but they're all about brands.
They really are. I mean, that's why I joked. I grabbed Under Armour because I thought we were talking before the show. It's expensive, but I thought when I started, maybe it makes me a little bit more legit. But it's expensive, and that's what. And I understand some of the administrators. They're like, "Whoa, wait a second! I thought we were just going to be playing sports." But even down to paying the referee, you got to pay the referee.
You got to pay the refs. Yeah.
I never forget. I had to give $50 cash in a scrimmage to a referee because we needed to pay him, and that's you talk about what an AD does. They make sure everything is taken care of, so the administration is happy.
Right.
So.
If you had a choice in a perfect world, would you focus on that full time, or would you go back to being an athletic director?
I think I want to be an athletic director. I mean, I love what I do, but again, it's about the relationships. With, like I told you, I mean, I'd love to be even just an SID because I think I could combine both my talents of developing the program and doing the media. I think that's fun.
Yeah, the media is fun, but it ain't, it's a lot of pressure with the media too.
There is,
especially once people know who you are. And every story you put out,
Well, that's a great, that's a great point. Following you and look at what I do. Sometimes people knock you down and don't take you seriously or get sometimes jealous. Whatever it is,
a lot. Yeah.
It's like and that's one thing. I have some school. I'll put out like, for example, I'll put out in all soccer team. I had some coach who were like thrilled, hitting me back, players retweeting it. Then you'll have a coach or two. Who are you and what is this? How do you even come up with questioning?
Right.
I'm like, okay, do you not want your certificates? But that's one of the that's one of the frustrating. And they I won't mention the school, but I've named there's one school I've named two coach of the years and a bunch of all team in the past year, and I don't hear a peep from them. And then there's some that love it, and those are the schools, honestly, that I give more attention. You talk about being biased, right? You're going to appreciate what I do. I'm going to help you out too and give you more public. I don't want to give the people that don't take us seriously. Why should I?
Well, when you talk about bias, that's why I never write about Lake Teller or Granby. I went to both of those schools, so I just don't write about them at all. I really don't cover Norfolk State either. Although we do, I don't. So because once that word bias gets thrown out as a writer, it's really hard to. I ain't gonna say hard to come back from that, but people will use that against you.
That's a great point, though, because I wonder, if some of the Bryant and Stratton's a little bit different because I think Cornell Parker's the only coach there that's there now that was there when I was there. So the Coleman's there, and I know the softball coach, but
the track coach. Man, they're gonna have a heck of a track.
They are. I tell you what. Yeah. Again, they're to me they're the standard of what you need to do.
They got a track coach that should be at a high D1 school.
But you know what? But that's what Eric Blackwell over there does. That school. I mean, I can't say it. That school supports their programs more than any school I've seen, and I think that's what can get them over. I mean, I've been involved in those conversations, and I've heard what they preach, and it's true. They're up to their president. Their president's amazing.
Right.
But I think if some of these coaches weren't at the schools I used to be at, I probably would cut off some of the coverage, but I think I just feel like I want to promote them because I hired them. Right. But it is true, and I probably wouldn't be as biased. I try not to be, but when I do see something like a Jordan Carter, guys leading the country in home runs, he played at Norfolk State. He's now at Stratford.
Nice.
I can't deny that. And he's actually been the only 2-time player of the week for us. Okay. Just because he was doing, I mean, I can't deny what he was doing.
He's doing his thing.
It was just, so you gotta, I don't want to not cover something because I would be biased, but I do want to make sure that my coverage isn't biased, if that makes any sense.
Gotcha. All right. So for those that want to find you on social media, where can they look?
Yep. We can, website is smallcollegesportsreport.com, and then Twitter's @small_college1. Of course, we're on Facebook, Small College Sports Report. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's small.college.sports@mail.com. At mail, not Gmail, but mail.
Right. Gotcha.
But yeah, anything I can do to help anyone, I'd be more than happy to do that. And I appreciate you having me on today.
No problem. Thanks for coming, Chris.
Thank you, man. Thanks, Jamar.